We've been talking a lot at the conference about predicting the future, forecasting um, what future consumer behavior is going to be like. And Cliff Fawcett and Tom Ellis from Brand Genetics have got a great new method that's innovative in itself and actually speaks to innovation in the future. We're going to hear hot off the press, new innovation on how to use crowdfunding for insight into the future. Tom, Cliff?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Aaron.
So I'm in awe of the people who stand up here without notes, David Miliband-like, so most of them don't forget their important things to say. I'm Tom, this is Cliff. We're from Brand Genetics. We're an insight and innovation agency, and we talk about using forward thinking. Forward thinking really means how we help our clients understand the direction of change and apply that to their business so that they can create innovation that's fit for the future rather than the past. Makes sense, I hope. What we're really interested in, therefore, is looking for what are the next generation opportunities, what are the places that we can look for to have new ideas about where to find new ideas, and indeed, sort of how do we then turn those into solutions that are fit to meet those future needs. And that's really why we're excited to talk to you today about crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, well, let's just start. I can hardly see the guys in the back, but who knows what crowdfunding is? Put your hand up if you know what crowdfunding is. That's pretty good, okay. So if you've actually been on a crowdfunding site and looked at projects, put your hand up. Okay, and what if you have invested, or even better, launched something? Has anyone invested or launched? Okay, a fewer. Great, okay, well listen, in a nutshell, it's not particularly scary. It's just another way of raising funds, often for starter businesses, that typically would have come from, say, VC or banks. So that's what it does. Some people talk about it as micro-patronage, because it originated as things that were used to fund arts or films, so that idea of patronage. But increasingly, it's anything. So you can be funding your latest sous vide cooking technology, or indeed you can be Pebble Watch and you can be raising 10 million to fund the new wearable watch. Indeed, you can be Sony, but that's perhaps another conversation, who've hid their own wearable watch on a Japanese crowdfunding site that no one knew about. But whilst there are different forms of crowdfunding, essentially it boils down to this. It works by raising money for a defined project within a specified time limit and with a goal of raising a minimum sum. Now, to us, that sounded an awful lot like a concept test, an innovation concept test. Donors usually get some sort of reward or recognition, so that might be a product itself when it gets launched. It might be a discount of that product, or it might be something as sort of, in some ways, measly as a t-shirt with the product picture on it. But they get some sort of recognition, and equally, they are donors. They do not have any, in most crowdfunding sites anyway, they do not have any ownership over that idea. So, it's not a fad, it's here to stay. And as you can see, it is growing. I mean, I think Kickstarter and Indiegogo, two of the biggest sites, started in around about 2008, 2009. So it's been growing pretty fast. $10 billion at the moment is what it's worth. And that's really the beauty of it for us. It's something that is already out there, something that people are using. It's not trying to force another methodology into people's busy lives. And excitingly, if you're in crowdfunding anyway, it's going to be worth an awful lot. Now, at the top estimate, $500 billion, don't get to say that very often, $500 billion will be invested in crowdfunding by 2020. Considering that SMR reckon that our market research industry is worth about $40 billion globally, you can see why we're starting to get excited. And the other thing is, the people putting their money, the real, everyday, normal people putting their money into these things, well, they're exactly the sort of people who you want to be talking to about innovation. So they're engaged. They're actively engaged with the category, with the product and the idea, with their communities. And these people want to be part of that creative process. They want to see something come to life. They're innovative, and we all know how hard that can be. They have a real interest in the new, if it solves something they perceive as a problem or a want for them. And they're willing to see the good in ideas, not just the negatives. And anyone who's tried to get innovation through a big company knows that can be tough. But these people are willing to take that risk with their own money. And finally, they're committed. So they're not just going to give you their own money for an idea that may or may not launch in a year or 2 years hence, but actually, they're going to become your product evangelists. They really want to get out there and actively help advocate that idea. So in a nutshell, I hope that gives you a sense of crowdfunding and why we're excited about its potential. Cliff's going to talk about Crowdsight, which is a tool we've started to use in the last 6 months, but we believe that only just scratches the surface, really, of the potential of this in the world of innovation. So it's very much in the early stages of development, but I'll hand over to Cliff. Give you the clicker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Tom. Well, as Tom said, we think crowdfunding is a really interesting place to look to sort of push clients' innovation efforts further. I think there's 2 main reasons for this. Firstly, on crowdfunding sites, there's a whole range of cutting-edge products, cutting-edge ideas across a whole range of categories that you can tap into. And secondly, there's a real visibility on those sites. You can see how many people are backing ideas, you can see what people are requesting in funding, and you can see how much money is actually then invested in those ideas. And if it succeeds, well, that starts to prove market appeal, and it also starts to indicate potential size of the opportunity. So, to our mind, it really is a great tool for future-focused innovation, starting to see that direction of change, as well as being able to develop inspirational platforms for more breakthrough innovation. At its heart, we feel there's real insight in money. We're not talking about focus groups. We're not talking about purchase intent or a tick box. It's not theory. People are actually investing their own hard-earned cash into these cutting-edge products, these cutting-edge ideas. And in that way, it really is looking at behavior, not explanation. It's not looking at what people may or may not do. It's looking at what they've already done. Now, as Tom said, it's about talking to the right people as well. We're really tapping into a direct conversation between the innovators and the early adopters. And so it's Rogers' diffusion of innovation in action. We're speaking to the right people, the people who adopt ideas on merit, not just new for new's sake. And we're starting to see when products successfully funded, they're crossing the chasm between the early adopters and the early majority. These ideas have utility that's been seen and a real benefit. And so we really feel there's sort of a future-focused insight that we can get through crowdfunding sites, learning from those cutting-edge prototypes and products. In a way, we're seeing tomorrow's products funded today. And when you start to analyze those products and sort of cluster and theme similar ideas together, you can really start to identify the direction of change within certain categories. And we feel that can change the way you think about innovation, but it can also change the way you do innovation. And finally, on the sort of theory side, to us it's a really agile approach. It's almost shortcutting the innovation process. It's more of a learn-by-doing approach, or at least a learn-by-what-others-are doing approach. Not going back to sort of first principles, but you're coming in at a sort of later stage in development, adapting, evolving, and creating from products, cutting-edge products that are already out there. So that's the theory, but I want to take you through very, very quickly some work we've already done in this area. And I want to take you through a case study we looked at in coffee. Now, this case study looked at 26 successfully funded projects, and those 26 projects had $2.5 million invested in them. They had backers of almost 25,000 people, and those people had engaged in those communities with 3,500 comments. Not a bad sample. We clustered those projects in related to sort of commonalities and similarities, and sort of identified 7 platforms. we feel the real value in Crowdsight is not looking at any individual project, but looking at the sort of the overall, where do things fit together? How does that show the direction of change for categories? Now, I haven't got time to take you through, I actually haven't even got time to take you through 3. I'm going to take you through the top one, My Style in Home. The real sort of insight territory we found in here was this pushback against the currently dominant capsule coffee culture that we have. People were buying ideas that were really harking back to the ritual in coffee, wanting to enrich that in-home coffee experience, not just be about speed. And the other thing that all these projects had in common was that it was more than just about the coffee. It was about the ceremony that used to be in coffee, about respect for ingredients and about respect for the drinker of the coffee, and about making a statement about the sort of coffee drinker that I am. So pulling that together, we found that actually these projects were really, really popular. They were overfunded by more than 300%. So what do I mean by that? The funding that was requested, the investment was 3 times more than that original request for funding over all these projects. And just to sort of highlight, that's not typical. Most projects that succeed in their funding only do so just 100% or around that mark. So to be overfunded by more than 300% really shows the appeal and drive in this area. Perhaps even more interesting than that is how much, on average, each individual put into these projects. It's almost $100 of their own money they put in. To us, that's a really serious amount of money to put down on a product you've never seen or even touched. And that really starts to prove, proof of concept for those projects. Now, as I said, the real value is not to look for us at any one project, but to look at the commonalities, the similarities across them. And the areas here really tapped into this idea of craft coffee, but done easily. The respect for ingredients being really high on the list. And perhaps most importantly, precision, making sure that my cup of coffee is perfect each and every time. Now, we think this, as it is, can be a really rich platform for innovation for people in the coffee industry or related industries, maybe tea or beyond. But what you also get from looking at crowdfunding sites is the products themselves. You get real tangible ideas to build from. There were 5 standout products in this platform. I'm just going to highlight 3 of them now. Firstly, the sort of overall winner, La Fenice. Apologies to any Italians in the room. This was really a modern interpretation of craft coffee. It was harking back to those principles of how a coffee was made at the turn of the 20th century, but with a modern twist, a modern way of getting that really precise coffee every time. Cold brewer. This was the way of getting a really good cold brewed coffee, but in the way that you slow down, really connect with that drink again. It was low tech, but the way that you had control over the way the coffee dripped through was really, really precise, making your perfect cold brew coffee each and every time. And finally, Duo. This was really built on the principles of respecting those ingredients and knowing what a good cup of coffee should really taste like. And in this product itself, it makes sure that you never over-extract the coffee. You never get that bitter taste. It's just how it should taste every time. Now, we think there's real value in these, in giving these ideas or similar ideas to an R&D team. I mean, imagine the sort of fun and excitement they could have building from ideas as sort of cutting edge as these. So that's Crowdsight, and I realize it was a whistle-stop tour. We feel there's a real richness in sort of forward-thinking platforms and inspiration for innovation to be found on crowdfunding.
And if anyone wants a copy of the full coffee report, we'd be more than happy to share it with you. If you just want a coffee, wait till the next speakers have finished, and then there'll be one next door. But as I say, thank you to Cliff for the Crowdsight, but we are using what's already there at the moment, and we think there's so much more potential to be tapped by the whole sort of idea, the whole platform of crowdfunding. So we'd love to hear from anyone who has found their own imagination sparked, or anyone who wants to talk about partnering, or even clients who want to see how they might apply this to their businesses. But hopefully we've got some time for questions here and now.
That's great. Thank you very much for that presentation. We do have time for questions. So do we have any questions for Cliff and Tom on crowdfunding for insight into the future?
If they're hard, I'll make Cliff answer them.
I'll kick us off, give everybody a chance to think about what they want to ask. Congratulations on bringing this innovative approach to the industry. I love it, and this is a great forum for you to bring it to the industry. It takes a lot of guts and courage to do what you're doing. So let me ask you a question. So this is brand new. You just brought it out. What kinds of objections are you facing as you bring this to market, and how are you answering those objections?
I think there are a few sets of challenges. One is industry. Frankly, at the moment, there's 10 billion going on here, but this is limited to, or not limited, but in terms of any sort of scale and size, it doesn't cover a lot of industry. So you've got, we've done it with bread, we've done it with coffee, we've looked at beer, but it's not applicable to everything. So finding the right hubs at the moment. We believe that will change over time. I think the second thing is almost a not invented here. So people love coming up with their own ideas, and we do believe this is, as Cliff says, lean and agile. Take what's there and adapt it. And people find that sort of hard enough, but within their own sort of processes. I think when they're seeing other people's ideas, again, the temptation can be to find the reasons why we didn't come up with it and why we could do it better or we wouldn't do it that way. So it's at the moment I think it's those two mainly, and I think the other challenge, frankly, is which we're wrapping our heads around, how in the process to use this. Is this part of the process, or is this standalone in its own right? At the moment, for us, it's been part of a process. We believe, again, that there will become a time, the right project, the right place, that it'll be standalone.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Cliff and Tom? There's one.
Carl Swicker, Labda. You're taking, by the looks of it, successful crowdfunding projects. There are also very many unsuccessful crowdfunding projects. Don't you think you're running a risk of missing out on really golden opportunities just because the consumers who's investing in it doesn't see it yet? So the need is not really manifest, but it's deeply or borrowed or unarticulated, so you're missing opportunities for your clients?
I think that's a really good question. I think to our mind, as Tom said at the beginning of the presentation, looking at this sort of 6 months, 9 months, started looking at 6 months, 9 months ago, and our first sort of point of call was, okay, so what's being funded successfully? What is sort of proving that market appeal and, as we said, sort of crossing the chasm? But I think you're right. There's probably a potential to sort of start to find ways of identifying, well, what are those other really rich projects that maybe do have potential but haven't been even proved on crowdfunding yet?
Yeah, I think at the moment it's built on the successes, but you're right, there are probably lots of hidden gems in there. I suppose in the same principle as the way our clients sort of run things through big concept tests and use the ones that work, probably never dust off the ones that don't, sadly. But we're trying to sort of find that compatibility. But I'm sure that there will be things that in a year's time. There are plenty of these things that people launch again, try again, refine. If you look at one of the ones that had the biggest, the coolest cooler, this guy, he raised how many million?
He broke the record. I think it was about $12 or $14 million he ended up raising, but his first project failed.
Yeah.
But he went back to the drawing board, looked at it again, and now it's the most successful kick-started project.
That's great. Thanks again, guys. Can't wait to see where you are in a year.